How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiaga, as always, and today is Friday, August 9th. We got some more preseason games on the slate for later today, probably just in about half an hour, so make sure to check those out. But in preparation for that, stay tuned for this episode. I have a lot of good topics to get to on today's show. Some more updates on Brandon Aiyuk, probably some live updates as I'm getting them on my phone that I'll provide to you guys. Also, some comments made by Jerry Jones on CeeDee Lamb's contract extension, saying that there is no urgency from his part to get that done. CeeDee Lamb responded to that, so we're going to get to that and dissecting that entire thing. Plus some more topics that we're going to get to on today's show. I'll reveal those as we go on through the episode. But before we start, I have something new to share with you guys. As you can see on your screen, if you got a question during the show, I want to hear about it. Your input is a big part of what makes this show great, and we thrive on your energy and insights. So whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion you just have to share, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. Now, if you want to make it absolutely clear and sure that your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Use the super chat feature. Just click on the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This way, it guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead, let us know what you're thinking, hit the super chat button again, and let's keep this show as interactive and as exciting as possible. But if you prefer an alternative option, you still have the option to use the tip and donations link, GSMCPodcast.net, and leave a comment or question there. We couldn't do this without you and without your amazing support, and we're so thankful to have you guys part of this community. As always, we appreciate it whenever you guys are able to use the super chat button that is now available to you guys on your screen, or through the tip and donations link, GSMCPodcast.net. But now that allows me to bring up this Brandon Aiyuk situation again, right? We've been talking about it for the last few days, and frankly, it's what a lot of people, mostly everyone's been talking about, because this is right on the edge, I think, of being a blockbuster move, one of the biggest moves we've seen all offseason, and it has just come down to the Steelers being able to trade for Aiyuk potentially staying with the 49ers, or basically those two options. Those are the only two options. I'm getting a lot of updates on my phone, so if I get any breaking news or anything like that, I will provide it. But I will get to the latest developments on this. But just off of yesterday, or actually this morning, ESPN's Dan Graziano reported that the 49ers overall, after basically a whole week of going through this back and forth and trying to find a resolution, they want to find a final solution pretty soon, according to Graziano, one way or another. So meaning they either trade him, they're pretty open to trading him, so either they find that solution, or maybe they re-engage with Brandon Aiyuk and get him to maybe stay on the team, or the last option, which is probably the most unlikely one, keep him through this fifth-year option and then let him hit free agency maybe next offseason. I do know that one's probably less likely, almost impossible, for lose him for basically nothing, but it is an option on the table regardless. So just off of the bat of that, I wrote this morning, and just off of that, some more news came out just recently, I think like about an hour ago, from NFL Network's Tom Pelissero, that Aiyuk and the 49ers have had another sit together. They pretty much laid it all out on the table again, and there is some encouraging thoughts that Aiyuk could potentially now re-sign with the 49ers. That's looking a little bit more optimistic than it was just this morning or a few days ago. So that's pretty much still an option, because of the fact that, because everything seems to be, like I said, staying with the 49ers or maybe just being traded to the Steelers, that is pretty much just held up for one main reason. And I'll get to all the issues on hand after I read you guys this quote from Mike Garafolo from NFL Network. He appeared on the Rich Eisen show yesterday, just basically on where he thought this whole situation would go with Brandon Aiyuk. He said, I will still continue to say Brandon Aiyuk winds up as a Pittsburgh Steeler. I believe that that is going to wind up being the case. We do not have an agreement at this point on either side. Then he goes on to say a few more things before he closes it out and says, I believe he winds up with the Pittsburgh Steelers in relatively short order, sort of supporting the idea that the 49ers, like I said before, want to find a resolution sooner rather than later. So it seems like I said yesterday, something, you just kind of feel it. Something has to happen. Something has to give. Over the weekend, where usually these massive deals happen, it's been sort of a streak to happen on Fridays, oddly enough. So fingers crossed, maybe we get some news tonight on top of the preseason games. But he believes that something will happen soon, and that is being traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the obstacles, like I mentioned before, there's a good amount of them, and they're also kind of, hard to follow. So bear with me as I try to explain it to you guys and try to follow me as best as you can. The first thing is that the main sense and feeling around everything is that if there were to be an eventual trade, it would be to the Steelers. That seems to be the general consensus around everybody reporting on this issue. But although that may be the case, CBS Sports' Jonathan Jones reported that Pittsburgh isn't offering what the 49ers are looking for ideally in offering them a wide receiver back. We mentioned that in an ideal world, the 49ers would want George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, or someone of that level back if they were going to make a direct trade with the Steelers. But obviously, the Steelers don't want to do that. If they're going to give up one of their best players and just get back probably equally as good of a player back and pay him a ton of money, they're not really getting any better. So that really makes no sense for the Steelers to negotiate that sort of deal. But with that being the case now, it seems like a deal breaker if no wide receiver is going back to the 49ers. So the Athletic's Diana Russini also reported that the 49ers, yes, are looking for a wide receiver back in any sort of deal, but they are open for other positions as to where we saw, the Steelers being willing to give up their left tackle, Dan Moore, their guard, James Daniels, or some other receivers like Calvin Austin or something like that. But it isn't something that stood for too long, honestly, because then you have the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's Jerry Dulac saying that Pittsburgh wouldn't be willing to trade a player at all in order to get Brandon Aiyuk, so being more in favor of just giving away some picks, maybe some high-end picks, but he didn't really specify what sort of range the draft picks would go for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But you would have to imagine it would have to be a couple first-rounders if no players are being involved in that from the Pittsburgh side of things. So that's the recent stuff, right? Plus what I mentioned, that Brandon Aiyuk could now be a little bit more open to re-signing with the 49ers after surveying the landscape a little bit with the Browns, the Steelers, and the Patriots. But I thought Mike Garafolo brought up an interesting point when he continued on his statement on the Rich Eisen show by mentioning a potential third team now if anything was to get done with the Steelers. He said, I have no doubts in my mind that the 49ers have had those conversations. I have been told that, and they're nosing around the league. And the problem is nobody's really got an excess of receivers that can give you that caliber of guy you're looking for. Also, not only is that, fascinating to see a three-team trade, very NBA-like, which, raises my doubts a little bit more. But especially if that third team, they're almost like the middleman in this major deal between the Steelers and the 49ers. They're most likely not getting anything too desirable back. The Steelers are going to get Aiyuk and maybe something else on top of that. I highly doubt it. The Steelers are going to give the 49ers some draft picks, and that third team is going to give the wide receiver over to the 49ers. So they're really going to get the short end of the stick overall. So I wouldn't see why too many teams would want to be involved in a trade like that and be sort of that middleman. So that's where my doubts lie. And also on top of that, we haven't really seen a three-team trade since almost 1987 involving Eric Dickerson, the Hall of Fame legendary linebacker, or not linebacker, the running back, in a trade that involved the Rams, the Bills, and the Indianapolis Colts. That was the last time, and that was way before we have the NFL that we have nowadays. So it's highly unlikely, but again, I mentioned it yesterday, the fact how NBA-like this trade is getting, talking about 3-team trades, a bidding war, and just so many preferences being held, and the power that Brandon Aiyuk has in all of this. It makes it so fascinating to see what ends up happening with this deal. But it all comes down to the fact that I think the 49ers have almost had enough of this fiasco going on. This whole week has been filled with Brandon Aiyuk updates and rumors and stuff like that. I think the 49ers intentionally made it that way to have a week where this week is going to be designated to opening up those trade talks. We'll see what's out there. And they've had some good offers. Brandon Aiyuk has had some good contract offers as well. But because he has that power, it's become a little bit more difficult to work something out if the Steelers don't offer what the 49ers are looking for. And if the Steelers are really being serious about this, they should stop, almost halfwaying it and go all in if they're actually going to do something about it. I know they're negotiating. That's the whole point of it. But, it's been a while now, and the 49ers are sort of getting impatient, and so are the Pittsburgh Steelers to that point as well. So with that all being the case, everything, building up to this crescendo moment of sorts, it almost feels like it's going to have a lackluster, disappointing ending to it. For all that has been said and everything that has been reported, I'm just starting to feel that now, if nothing happens really this weekend, if we don't get a sure answer, a statement or something like that from Aiyuk or the Steelers or anything like that, I feel like nothing's really going to happen, and Aiyuk might end up just staying on the 49ers. That's just my overall feeling. It's been days now, and nothing has really moved other than eliminating the Patriots and I guess the Browns up until this point. So, I'm feeling a little bit doubtful that anything happens. I hope that it happens because it'll be exciting, changing the landscape of everything around the NFL. But that's all the updates that I have up until now. Some more could break throughout the duration of this show, so we'll keep talking about it, I'm sure, as I go on through the episode. But that's pretty much everything I had so far and all the intricacies that are being filled into this entire situation. It's going to be pivotal this weekend, I believe, with any movement with this Brandon Aiyuk trade. If anything happens this weekend, then we're going to see some movement. If not, you could probably guarantee almost that Aiyuk is going to stay with the 49ers at least one more year, or they maybe figure out an extension. So that's pretty much it on that segment. We'll leave that there, and we're going to move on to another interesting topic that I just saw this morning. Jerry Jones made some comments yesterday on his star wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, obviously looking for a contract extension, but Jerry Jones said pretty clearly that he has no urgency in that regard to extend CeeDee Lamb up until this point. We're going to go into my thoughts on that, Jerry saying something like that, CeeDee Lamb responding to it, and also some comments made by Emmitt Smith around the Cowboys and how they're handling all of this situation. So that is coming up in just a few seconds. Don't go anywhere.